I'm Kyle Sherman, the founder and CEO of Flowhub, and we are the leading cannabis retail management platform for North America. I got started in this business after a real personal experience using cannabis as medicine. I was prescribed antidepressant medications, anti-anxiety medications in my early 20s after a bad breakup. And I ended up on probably 6 different pharmaceuticals. And about a year into that experience, I didn't feel like myself anymore. And I really wanted to get off these medications. And so I went to try to just titrate off of them like many people do. And I quickly found out that was a bad idea. I had all these physical side effects trying to titrate down off these medications, these brain zaps, these uncomfortable muscle spasms. It was just like this awful, painful experience. So I went online and I found that there were thousands of other people trying to get off these medications that couldn't. And, of course, you're thinking, why didn't the doctors tell me about this before I went on? This should be like well known, well documented, and it's not. But I saw a documentary about Charlotte Figi using cannabis for her epilepsy treatments, right? And how successful it was. I started to think maybe, just maybe, if I try some CBD and THC, some strain, maybe I could use that to get off of these pharmaceuticals. And so I discovered a strain called Harlequin. I bought a Pax vaporizer. I used it 3 times a day. I was living in LA at the time. And I worked really hard at making sure I was on the schedule, and I titrated at the same time. And these side effects of coming off these really heavy, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications were minimized. And I felt like a new person. It took about a year, but I got off everything. So cannabis was this, big eye opener for me. Not only did it help me get off these drugs, but it taught me all about prohibition, right? As I started to dive into it. Why is this prohibited? I started to think, how can I become a voice for this industry, for the people I read about online? How can we create something that could, change the world, that could end prohibition finally after 75 years of it, right? So we were still in LA, and I had read that Colorado was going to legalize for adult use. And the big difference between California and Colorado at this point was this highly regulated framework that was being implemented, right? Testing standards, reporting standards with the state. And so I convinced my wife, Lindsay, to move out to Colorado with me. We were pregnant at the time. Our first daughter's due date was April 20th. So I thought it's a sign from the universe that we're on the right track, that we're doing the right thing, right? So we felt really, that we were doing the right thing. And so when I got to Colorado with Lindsay, I started working with Weedmaps and another company, Dixie Elixirs. And then I found myself running compliance at a vertical supply chain where, we had to report all this regulatory data to the state. And at the time it was called MITS. It's now called Metrc. Everyone knows Metrc in the industry. I think we've all heard about it at this point. But back then we would have to report to the state system manually. We'd have to write in all these data points into this interface. And it was really slow. And I thought, this is just not scalable. So I went to the Department of Revenue. I said, you got to open up this state system. We need an API. And so that was really the beginning of kind of formulating this whole idea and concept around creating a platform that increases transparency, that helps businesses grow, right? That helps these dispensary owners grow their business in better ways, give them the data they need to succeed, and give consumers just a better experience overall, a better shopping experience, faster lines, these sorts of things. So I thought, to scale this business, this is where I'm going to try to make an impact. I'm trying to start something that helps drive transparency and better consumer experiences and better business growth for dispensary owners. And that was the beginning of Flowhub. Entrepreneurs often are generalists, right? Like I think it's our job as entrepreneurs and leaders to go hire phenomenal people in the respective areas, right? I'm just a vision holder, right? I hold the vision. I have this vision for a world where safe cannabis products are accessible to every adult on planet Earth, right? And so I'm not going to be the guy to solve this alone. right? I would go find amazingly smart people to come tag along and adopt the vision and mission as their own, right? And so when it comes to, compliance, right? It's a very boring topic. I'm not going to be the utmost expert in compliance. But the interesting thing is, this is all new in cannabis, right? Like this has never been really done before. And so you find great people who are really savvy in their particular areas. You bring them into the business, you give them a great place to work. You try to go, raise cash so you can give them resources to hire the right people underneath them. And you just, you build a great business. And I think you don't necessarily need to be a specialist yourself as the entrepreneur. As I go back and look at my life, right, and how I got to where I am today, sitting here with you, I was an entrepreneur at a very early age. My first business was in middle school. I was repairing computers and building networks for businesses in a small town that I grew up in outside of Chicago. And I would, my friends' parents who owned small businesses in town, I would set up their infrastructure and networks, and I learned how to invoice, right? Those were the early days. I was making probably $30 an hour when you broke it down at the end of the day. I hired some friends, and we're all computer nerds. We'd go in and have a lot of fun together. But through my high school years and into my 20s, I think in those days I started to really look for the wrong things. I was really curious, but I eventually was looking for the cash. Where's the cash? How do you make the money? How do you, and really quickly, I think I've from my early 20s to my mid 20s, I figured out that it's really not about the money, right? The money is a side effect of adding value to somebody's life or doing something bigger than yourself, right? And money is just a tool. And so instead of going and chasing cash, right, let's go make a ton of money, right? I think that's not important, right? What's really important is adding value to people's lives, right? And so that was a pretty interesting, change of perspective for me in my early 20s, my mid 20s was, wow, it's really about providing that level of value to people's lives. And that's how you generate cash flow that you can reinfuse into the business to continue to drive the mission forward to accomplish anything, right? And so all that together is how I think about entrepreneurship and building something great. The mission hasn't changed. We're still on the same mission. We're just maybe not in the same room as we once were. But, it's interesting, right? It was unfortunate that we had to deal with this giant pandemic as a society, as a global society, right? We had to deal with something really quite disruptive. We made the very hard decision in late February to test going remote. I started to realize this is not going to go away in 2 months. I started to look at the 1918 pandemic and really probably what we'd see with this one. And so I made the tough call towards the end of February that we were going to test this out. And, it so happens that this test turned into a permanent thing. We're going to go try to be remote. Oh, now we're remote, right? So in early March, I realized that we were gonna have to probably do this longer term than everyone was expecting. And so I started to really think about, what does it mean to be remote? I mean, how to your point, right? We have this great culture. How do we continue to cultivate great relationships internally? How do we hire people remotely? And at this point, by the way, we've always had remote folks involved in the business. We've had remote leaders, but our main office was Denver, where we had probably the most team members located. And so, we had some familiarity with what it was like to have people remote, but we still would have people come in quarterly and things, right? So by midsummer, we were working to get out of our office space, this beautiful headquarters that we had in downtown Denver. Realized we're not gonna need this. We don't need to spend money in this particular area, right? I think, in terms of communication with the team, right, I had to get in front of the team and give them the hard news. Hey, I think we're going to be a remote first business. And the interesting thing about this was, I think a lot of our team members actually were pretty excited about the flexibility. They saw that this was a really great step in being able to go find amazing talent to add to the team in any geography, that we could, Flowhub could span many states, that this didn't necessarily need to just be in Denver or in the Bay Area. This could be anywhere. It could be in Montana. It could be in Maine. It could be in Florida. Boundaries don't exist for us anymore. We could hire people internationally if we wanted to. it's about finding great people to fit in with the team, right? And so, wow, there's no more boundaries. So I think people started to see the possibilities. And there were people at the same time who struggled with the idea of, what are we going to do? I got all my social, energy from going into the office. And so I think we've creatively leveraged Slack, Zoom, and our meeting schedules just to create, more connections, to give people a voice that otherwise may not be heard, right? We're trying to cultivate a really great remote environment, and we're still figuring it out. We haven't, this is not fully dialed in, right? We're still working on it all the time. We're trying to be better. And so I think, as this continues on, we'll start to see how this evolves. But, we've got this now smaller office in Denver. We're hoteling. So I think we have 20 hot desks or so, that people can trade out. And maybe we open a couple of those around the country and they become kind of these Flowhub satellites that you can, rent desks at. I don't know, but I'll tell you, this is working phenomenally well. The teams are more productive than ever. We've been disconnected for some time, but we're all the same team. We're all one team. We've hired people now remotely, and they've plugged right in very elegantly into the ecosystem. And things are working well. So I'm really excited about where this is going. And this is the future, right? If you're not doing this today, if you're a leader that's saying, hey, we need to have a one spot where people come in every day, then you're going to be left behind. You're not going to get the best talent. You're not going to be able to retain talent the way that other companies who are kind of looking ahead are going to be able to do. And that's just, frankly, this is the future. Welcome to it, right? The pandemic has presented, some really unique opportunities for technology, right? When you start to think about, cashless transactions, for example, what does that mean for the future, right? We don't want to necessarily touch cash anymore as consumers, but we're a cash-heavy industry. That's opportunity, right? You start to think about omni-channel experiences. Today, we present, through our API partners, we have, great omni-channel experiences for consumers to interact with these business owners, whether it's picking up, ordering ahead for pickup, or getting delivery, right? Empowering those live menus you see on the website for groups like Weedmaps and Dutchie and iHeartJane, right? Leafly. And so I think, these services are going to become really important over the coming years, right? Like, I think we're going to see just bigger adoption of order ahead delivery services. We're going to see a bigger adoption of cashless payments, right? This is the future of where we're going ultimately as an industry. It's going to feel more modern than it has in the past. The interesting thing about the pandemic is it really did show everybody that this is an essential industry. Like, even the worst pandemic in recent history didn't bring our industry down, yet we're still federally illegal, right? So we're on the precipice of some major change, right? This is the very beginning of this next chapter. I think we're at a very large inflection point. I know lawmakers are at an inflection. We're seeing, the MORE Act make some real progress. Where obviously safe banking's been in the last 4 COVID relief packages. So we're seeing progress that will ultimately help drive technological change in the space as we see the industry come into this next chapter. So, from Flowhub personally, you're going to see some really great innovation around our consumer experiences with Flowhub, our business to business experiences. And so I'm really excited as I continue to see what our product team is delivering on, for the future here, because I think we're going to help really create it, actually, right? We're at the precipice of and the forefront of actually seeing some of these things come to life. So I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah, I mean, diversity, equity, inclusion in our space is incredibly important, right? We've had 75 years of prohibition that's based in racist roots, and it's still based in racist roots. You look at the minority communities and POC communities that are affected adversely by the war on drugs. It's just a much higher percentage than white communities and affluent communities. It's just that's the reality. And I think it's our job as cannabis leaders to build companies that are diverse, that are inclusive, and leverage our influence to help other companies become more diverse and inclusive. I helped start the Cannabis Trade Federation. And there we've built a really great diversity, equity and inclusion task force. We call it the DEI task force. And it's this great group of leaders who've come together to help put together a framework for the entire industry to opt into, to say, this is what good diversity looks like. Here's a rating system. Here's right. And so I think when I look forward to, the next, call it 5 years, I think we're going to see more legislation passed that expunges records, that helps, resolve some of these just really extraordinarily, sad stories about individuals who've been in prison for their entire life because they've smoked a joint and because they have black skin. This is insane, right? And so, I think just by the nature of also being in business and hiring diversely and being political by nature internally at a business. You see what Coinbase did recently and say, hey, we're not going to have any political chatter inside the company. I think that's wrong. Like we encourage that talk internally at Flowhub. Like we are innately a political movement in a lot of ways. The cannabis industry is now, right? And so I think in order for us to have true diversity, we need to be talking about this stuff. We need to be educating people. These conversations need to happen. They're uncomfortable conversations, right? I think as leaders, we get nervous. We don't want to say the wrong thing, but come on, let's try to do things right here. We got to fix this. This is an absolute shit show still. And it's time for it to change it for the better. And so, I think, for the work we're doing at CTF, the work we're doing individually as a company at Flowhub, and the chats I have with other leaders, the chats I have internally with our team members. This great T-shirt here came from one of our Black team members who was really passionate about creating some sort of swag that helped that helped the movement in some way, right? And so we created these T-shirts internally, and our own team members have worn these out to protest. We are in a very interesting time in history. And I think, we're feeling it. We have extraordinarily old people in Washington today. They don't represent the next generation. I mean, let's just be frank about it. Okay. Both sides of the table. And so there's a lot of work to do still, but I really do think we are headed in the right direction. People are tired of this. They are starting to yell from the rooftops. Companies are becoming politically involved for the first time, right? Diversity and inclusion is top of list, right? And so, and top of mind for people. So I think it's just, look, it's not about putting a black square on Instagram. It's not about necessarily a T-shirt. I mean, this is about really trying to do the right thing as leaders and, making sure we're hiring diversely and, and that we're really moving the ball forward. Be loud and proud. Use your stage or whatever is, as a voice, right? Like we have to be talking about this stuff. So that's how I feel about it. I think companies absolutely need to have these conversations internally. Like, come on, don't push it aside. If you're in this industry, there is no excuse to not be having these conversations. Yeah. Our vision is a world where safe cannabis products are accessible to every adult on planet Earth. Right. And we're powered by our mission, right? Which is to empower dispensary growth, right? So when we think about this, obviously financial services and financial technology is a big part of solving for the dispensaries growth. If you look at where they're, why is it hard for a dispensary to grow today? They don't have access to capital necessarily, right? It's very expensive to handle cash. They don't have a bank account, right? So you start to think about how do you solve those problems, right? And so I think from Flowhub, you certainly will see, Flowhub tackling financial service problems in this space over time. I think, bills like safe banking, the MORE Act, States Act, right? Any of these bills, preferably MORE Act, right? At this point, it gets passed. I think it just makes solving those problems probably easier, right? But it's really no excuse, right? I think, we're all about, coming up to a barrier and trying to figure out a way around it. And so despite a bill passing or not, I think it's our job to help empower these dispensaries, right? And so we are going to figure out how to do it. And I think, when it comes to financial services, there are probably some very elegant ways to solve for these problems. I'm sure you'll see some interesting things come out of Flowhub in the coming years. These are problems that absolutely need to be solved. So looking forward to it. Yeah, state expansion for us is extraordinarily important. I mean, we get notes all the time from dispensary owners in other markets saying, "When are you going to be here? Come to our state, please serve us." And and so we certainly want to move as quickly as we can. I think it's always been, a mandate for me that we stay focused, that we're focused in the markets that we go into, that they're of a certain maturation right before we maybe enter the market. As we grow, I think it's about opening new markets probably faster. I don't know if we've always done the best job opening markets as quickly as maybe we could have in the past, right? We certainly we hear from folks all the time who need our services. They need help, and our platform happens to be really great. We've got some great tools for customers, but I think we've done a poor job in over the past years in moving extraordinarily fast into new markets. And so I think you'll probably see Flowhub move a bit faster in the coming years as we penetrate new markets as they come online, and we'll do a better job at opening new markets faster. But I think that the reality is these merchants are small businesses, and not all of them are running a business for the fifth time, right? In fact, plenty of them are brand new. And so they're looking for partners like Flowhub to come in and help coach them and guide them. And, we've seen this play out now in over 10 markets. And so we're a great partner for a lot of these folks. And I think, I'm at least very excited about working with some of these new businesses in these newer markets that are now looking like they're going to come online here. I think market expansion, new products, these are all things that you're going to see from Flowhub in the coming years. I often get asked why Square, Stripe, Toast, what are you going to do when they come into the space? And I think one of the things that, these folks who ask these questions don't probably understand is the nuance in the actual supply chain itself. When you go to the store and pick up a granola bar, maybe it's a Cliff Bar or something, right? You turn it around, there's a barcode on there. That's a UPC code, right? The UPC code is the same for every single chocolate chip Cliff Bar that's on the shelf. And it's really easy. You just have 100 of those, or I have 125 of those, and that's what you have in stock. Maybe I need to order more. Now I have 200, but it's all the same UPC. In cannabis, things get a little more complex. This is just one component, right? That same Cliff Bar, if it was infused with cannabis, could come from many different batches. And those batches have to be reported to the state when something gets sold to a consumer. So if you turned, 100 Cliff Bars around in a dispensary, you might find that a lot of these SKUs are actually different because they come from different batches that we have to report back to the state, right? Otherwise, you're out of compliance and you can get fined or shut down, right? And so, just that one component alone, inventory in cannabis is different from inventory in traditional retail. It's different from how restaurants run. It's different from how a boutique runs that Square may service, right? Which is different than what Stripe's doing. And so I think it'd be very difficult for a company of, Stripe size to come in, or Toast size to come in and try to now break apart to learn everything, all the nuances across all these states. The way inventory works is one component, right? And then repurpose their software for it. But by the time they do all that, we're already 15 years ahead of them, right? Or 10 years ahead of them, right? If they had tried to attempt to do this. So I think the reality is we're not going to see players like Square, Stripe, or Toast come in and play. It's just not a reality. It's too complex. This is a highly regulated industry. We check IDs at the door. You have purchase limits you have to deal with. In many cases in medical states, you're dealing with, almost like a prescription, right? And you've got to, pull down purchase limits in that particular moment, and how much can this person buy? Oh, then by the way, 1 gram of concentrate's actually equal to 3.5 grams of flour in Colorado. So now you have to do the math on the back end, right? So the complexities in cannabis are so great that it would literally take a long time for a behemoth of a company to try to come in and compete in these areas. So if they do want to come play, well, gosh, they're probably going to acquire one of us, right? And the question even is, would we as a company ever want that? I mean, maybe if like strategically it makes sense, but I think what people don't realize is the sheer opportunity of scale in this market. Alcohol did $250 billion, over $250 billion in 2018 in the United States. Cannabis will eclipse that, right? So the sheer scale of this industry is a lot bigger, I think, than most people realize, meaning that standalone businesses like Flowhub could absolutely grow into a behemoth of their own, right? Like, it doesn't really matter what Square decides to do or what Toast decides to do. They're doing great in their own particular vertical or their own focus area. But I think, I think the future is bright for companies like Flowhub, right? We're doing great things today. We're still at the very tip of the iceberg. Remember, we've got a bunch of states that are not legal yet, right? I mean, the TAM is actually incredibly small still, right? So when you look at what's to come, it's quite incredible. I'm really excited about this work remote future we discussed earlier. I think it presents an enormous amount of opportunity for business. It breaks down barriers for talent. You can live anywhere. You can travel to anywhere and still get your job done, right? If you build trusting teams. And so I'm really excited about the work-life balance aspect of it. We recently were on the top 50 list. I think we were number 18 on Comparably's best work-life balance companies. We were up there with Lattice and some other great companies. So very grateful to be on that list. But I think a lot of that has to do with building trusting teams and giving them flexibility, right? And that flexibility includes like being able to travel. So like, to be able to have team members, to build virtual products first, right? It makes it much easier to do this, but to have team members that can go visit family, right, in Montana and spend a month there. They're going to work harder than someone who's, has to drive into an office every day, spend 2 hours commuting. They're going to get more done, actually, right? And at the same time, have better work-life balance. So I'm really excited about what this means for talent in technology and in industries that are able to do this, right? And I realize not every industry is able to pull it off, right? Retail, you've got to be in person. But I think this presents a really enormous opportunity for a large part of our population. And so I'm really excited about being able to access talent anywhere and to give talent the ability to work from anywhere as well.